the heart of this nation, under skies so blue,
there's a spirit that's stirring, values strong and true.
From the mountains to the prairies, from the cities to the sea, we stand for liberty, for faith and family. We're diving deep into the heart of what we believe.
So you've probably seen the headlines recently, right? About a pretty high-profile artist abruptly pulling out of some major music festivals.
Yeah, it's one of those stories that definitely makes you stop and think, okay, what's really going on here?
Exactly. And that's what we're going to do a deep dive into today.
It's a classic case, really. Yeah. A single incident that, when you look closer, just sort of unravels into all these much broader, more complex issues. We're going to try and unpack the allegations and the counterclaims around Azealia Banks' decision, pulling out of those 2 London festivals.
Right. Our goal here is to really dig into it. We want to get to the heart of the story, figure out not just what happened, but maybe what it suggests about bigger things like artistic freedom, the kind of pressures public figures face today.
And just the general state of public discourse, really.
Yeah. So we'll look at her specific claims. She mentioned political pressure, and also her wider critique of what she called performative activism.
And of course, we have to look at the other side, too. The festival organizers came out with a denial, so we need to cover that as well.
It definitely highlights how quickly things can get tangled up when public statements are involved.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, the central incident. On June 24th, the singer Azealia Banks, she's 34, announced she was canceling her shows. This was on X, the platform that used to be Twitter.
Right, a pretty lengthy post, as I recall.
Yeah, and the festivals were London's Maiden Voyage Festival in Burgess Park and also Boomtown Festival down in Hampshire. Both were scheduled for August.
And her core allegation was, well, it's pretty direct. She claimed, and this is a quote, that the promoters of both festivals were stressing me out for weeks, trying to force me to say Free Palestine.
And threatening to cut me from the bill because I won't say Free Palestine. That's quite an accusation.
It is. And she was very defiant about it, too. She said, I'm not dealing with the threats, and I'm not putting on a fucking hijab. Again, her words.
She framed it as extortion, didn't she? Saying they were insinuating that I need to say I support Palestine or they will drop me from the gig.
Yeah, and she basically said she'd rather drop them first. She didn't want to be associated with cheap groupthink bullshit, as she put it.
It gets even more intense, though. Her other claims were, let's say, highly controversial.
Definitely. She mentioned more thinly veiled racism and overt anti-Semitism from the fucking gays for Hamas. And then she used that hashtag #FLipPalestine.
Which obviously caused a huge reaction. And maybe it's important here just to reiterate, we're reporting on what she claimed in the source material. We're not, endorsing any of these specific views ourselves.
Absolutely. Just laying out what was said.
So beyond those immediate allegations about the festivals, Banks also seemed to be making a broader point, kind of giving context for why she reacted so strongly.
That's right. She did clarify later saying, and no, I'm not saying fuck actual Palestine, but fuck your dumbass slogans and performative bullshit.
Right. Performative bullshit or performative activism. What do you think she was really getting at there? It's a term you hear a lot.
Yeah, it is. And it generally means, actions that look good, that signal you're on the right side of an issue, maybe posting something online, but without necessarily doing anything that leads to real, tangible change.
So it's more about the appearance, the optics.
Exactly. It's about looking like you care, maybe using the right slogans rather than deep engagement or, actually helping. Banks seems to be voicing frustration with what she sees as that kind of superficial engagement with really complex, serious issues.
Okay, that makes sense. And she didn't stop there. She brought in a historical perspective, too.
She did. She said something like, that war has been going on in the background for fucking decades, way before anyone alive today was born.
And she criticized people throwing around words like genocide and Zionist, not even knowing the meaning of those words. What's the implication there, do you think?
Well, it seems she's pointing to a perceived lack of, let's say, historical depth or critical thinking in how people talk about this conflict, especially online.
Right.
When you use words like genocide or Zionist, which carry, immense historical weight and are really complex, contested terms, her point seems to be that using them casually or without fully grasping their meaning oversimplifies things drastically.
So it's about the nuance getting lost.
Precisely. She seems frustrated by the the lack of nuance in the public debate. She's not necessarily debating the definitions like genocide being the deliberate destruction of a group or Zionist relating to the movement for a Jewish state, but how those terms are being deployed.
Okay. And then she broadened the critique even further, hitting on this idea of ethical consumption under capitalism. That was quite a turn.
Yeah, it was. She said, while you drive around in our Teslas and leave comments from your iPhones, all built off the backs and the blood of children working in mines.
From dusk till dawn, there is zero ethical consumption under capitalism. Everything is connected to everything. That's a pretty sweeping statement about hypocrisy.
Oh, absolutely. It taps into a huge ongoing debate. The argument is basically that given how globalized everything is, supply chains, labor, resources, it's almost impossible to buy anything without it being linked to some kind of exploitation or injustice somewhere down the line.
Your phone, your car, anything.
Right. So by bringing this up in the context of activism, she seems to be challenging what she sees as maybe selective outrage, focusing intensely on one issue while maybe ignoring the wider system everyone's participating in.
And she also had some pretty sharp words for protesters themselves.
She did, yeah, claiming she doesn't need to appease some dumbass protesters who literally rely on those people in Palestine being crushed so they can solicit donations they do not give to the cause.
Wow. That's a deeply cynical take on why people protest to raise money.
It certainly is a very pointed accusation. She's basically alleging that some activism might actually, benefit from the continuation of conflict rather than seeking to end suffering. It questions the motives, the integrity of it all. But again, it's crucial to note this is her claim from the source.
Right. Okay, so Banks lays out all these detailed claims, these broader critiques. What was the response from the other side, the festival organizers?
Well, compared to Banks' very lengthy and detailed statement, their response, at least as reported by the Standard newspaper, was much shorter.
And what did they say?
Simply put, they denied it. According to the Standard, the festival organizers denied putting any pressure on Banks to make statements supporting Palestine.
So a direct denial. That creates a clear conflict right there. Her detailed account versus their flat denial.
Exactly. It puts the listener, you, right in the middle of these opposing statements.
So when we step back and try to make sense of all this, what does it really tell us? What's the takeaway when artists face these situations, this pressure to make political statements?
Well, I think what this case really illustrates, quite vividly actually, is how social media just amplifies everything instantly. An artist's personal stance, or even just the perception of their stance.
Or lack of one.
Exactly. It can become a flashpoint for huge global political arguments almost overnight. It really shows the pressure artists are under, not just to speak out, but sometimes there's this demand for what you might call, performative purity, especially in such a polarized environment.
And their responses, like we saw here, aren't always simple. They can be tangled up with personal beliefs, genuine criticisms of how activism works, maybe even financial concerns.
Definitely. It's rarely just one thing.
And what about that point Banks made about people throwing around words like genocide and Zionist not even knowing the meaning? How does this whole incident connect to that bigger challenge, understanding really complex global issues when information and misinformation move so fast?
That's a great point. It really underscores how difficult it is to navigate these complex geopolitical conflicts. When you're getting information in rapid-fire bursts, often through social media filters, it shows how easily narratives can get twisted or oversimplified or even, weaponized, especially when people are using these incredibly loaded terms, perhaps, without fully grasping the deep historical context or the nuances involved.
So it makes you question the information you're seeing.
It encourages you to think about the accuracy, the intent behind public statements, not just react to the surface level.
So ultimately, the so what here, what this whole episode kind of reveals, it's about that messy intersection, isn't it? Between entertainment, activism, public opinion, and how fraught that space can be right now.
Absolutely. It's like a snapshot of this moment where art, politics, personal conviction, they all just collide very, very publicly.
Yeah. A reminder of the tightrope public figures often walk.
And maybe the unspoken rules of engagement in today's highly charged social landscape.
Okay, so just to recap quickly, we've looked at the core tension. Azealia Banks making these very strong claims about political coercion, financial threats even.
Versus the festival organizers issuing a clear, direct denial.
Right. It leaves us, and you, the listener, with quite a bit to think about.
Indeed. And maybe a final thought to ponder on your own. In a world where someone like Banks asserts there's zero ethical consumption under capitalism, and where public figures constantly feel pressure to take sides, what responsibility do artists actually have? What about audiences? What about the event organizers themselves? How do we navigate political expression alongside artistic freedom?
That's a big question.
It is, and it's one that goes way beyond just this one incident, really. It touches almost every part of our interconnected world today.
Deep dive in the building. UK what really good. Let's dive in. Get triggered. Netflix, you son of an itch. In your show Adolescence, you pulled a race switch. The real killer teen is black, you made him white. This ish just ain't right. We're diving deep into the heart of what we believe. Conservative values in our souls, they're interweaved. With courage and with honor, we'll hold our ground. For freedom, for tradition in this land we found. We cherish our Constitution, the words that set us free. The right to bear arms, to speak and to agree. We honor our forefathers who fought with steadfast might for the dream of a nation shining bright in the night. In every town and village, in every heart and home, we'll uphold our principles, together we'll roam. Through trials and through triumphs, we'll never lose our way. With conservative values leading us day by day.